Welcome to the Ronning Center Philosopher Cafes for the winter of 2011. The cafes are part of what the Ronning Center for the Study of Religion and Public Life, which is a center of the University of Alberta, based at the Augustana campus in Camrose, but working various places in Canada. And together with my good friend and colleague Martin Tweedale, we've shaped cafes here in Edmonton for the last year and a half or so, I guess. And we also do them in Camrose periodically, although the theme is different because people think differently when they drink the water from Dried Meat Lake in Camrose. It's a different community, and so it's interesting to see the way the conversations develop in such distinct ways here in Edmonton as well as in Camrose. As some of you will know, in the fall, we explored walked down a series of avenues exploring the whole question of how life can become dehumanized. It's a dark theme, and since we're now in the winter, we have a very bright theme. So the theme for this term, the series that we're doing, 6 of them, are on what makes an excellent life. And this afternoon, my colleague Martin Tweedale will explore how the Greek philosophers thought about living well, what they thought excellence was. On the 22nd of January, we will have another cafe titled Via Activa versus the Via Contemplativa. And I'm delighted the whole issue of the life in community and the life of observation and solitude. And I'm delighted to tell you that Daniel Coleman will be animating that particular cafe. I'm bringing Daniel Coleman to give the Augustana Distinguished Lectures. Daniel Coleman holds the chair in Canadian literature and I think it's called something like world literature at the university in Steeltown, Hamilton. And he's written a marvelous, marvelous book titled In Bed with the Word, which the University of Alberta published last year. On the 5th of February, Who is the Happiest of All, with Mark Anilski, who some of you may have read Mark's book, Exploring Happiness. And then the 19th of February is a religious, brackets theistic worldview, a help or a hindrance to live an excellent life. And Professor Steve Martin from King's University College will be exploring that theme with us. And then on the 5th of March, Don Carmichael, if he survives today, he's actually here. You never know what'll happen. How much freedom of choice does one need to live an excellent life? Nobody could recommend listening and engaging Don Carmichael more than my children, a number of whom studied with him. So he's a wonderful person to engage around this. And then finally, the last session will be on the 26th of March under the title, Are Deep Attachments to Other Human Beings a Necessary Part of Living Excellently? And that will be animated by Suzette Phillips, who is recently got her doctorate and is a psychologist and has worked with one of the great classics of the spirituality of the Christian East called the Way of the Pilgrim. So I'm delighted you're here and that you all care about excellence. There are two technical matters today. One is Ian Tweedale is going to record for possibly YouTube broadcast the opening remarks by Martin, and I suspect that your remarks as well may be picked up by that, or at least are summarized by it. So I want to suggest two things. One is, if you don't want to be heard beyond these walls, just speak to me about that. There are ways to deal with that. I expect there are many of you that will want to be heard in a fulsome way beyond these walls. So that will be nice as well. The final technical detail is that our roving microphone has gone missing. It's been roving. I don't know where it went for the Feast of the Nativity, but it went somewhere. So we don't have it today. I would suggest, if you're comfortable, that you stand up and speak. If you aren't, that's fine. Martin will summarize your remarks so everybody can hear and participate. And then one final note. Sorry, there's so many. I've been thinking about how well this works for us. I mean, it's wonderful in so many ways. But I want to try something a little bit new, if you're willing to indulge this a little bit. During our conversation, as you know, Martin will speak for 15-20 minutes, and then we will open it up to the conversation and to our thinking together. And as you know, the purpose is to think together, to bring your best thoughts forward and engage each other, both Martin and each other, in the subject at hand. Here's what I want to try. The first person to lay out or to engage something that Martin has to say, I will then ask, are there others that want to speak to that theme or issue? So that we do our best in shaping a bit of a conversation around these issues instead of lining everybody up in a row and benefiting and suffering from what I usually call intellectual Tourette's. So if it's okay with you, we'll do that. If you, and I will sort of flag people, and then I'll change the subject. You know, after a little while, I will say, now, let's move to another subject. And you can raise the new one. Somebody can raise a new one. So let's try that and see how that goes and see if our conversation develops around depth and texture with that. So, welcome. Lovely to see you. Martin Tweedale, as most of you know, I believe, is a professor of philosophy at the University of Alberta for many, many years. Is Emeritus. He's also been teaching more recently at Grant MacEwan College. I'm delighted you're going to do this with us.
Thank you, David. All right, well, I'll get right down to business here, except that I want to thank everybody for coming out on this rather blustery winter day. I've been, of late, teaching Greek philosophy quite often, and the subject of Socratic ethics has interested me a lot. And what I want to do here is tell you about a certain theme which comes up in the Platonic... Oops.
It just needs to be pointed away from the microphone.
A certain theme which comes up in Plato's early dialogues, which supposedly represent at least the spirit of the actual historical Socrates. And the theme that I want to focus on, because I think it's one which runs through Greek ethics ever after. Is that loud enough?
Do you want to give me 1 second?
Okay.
Now, is it working?
No.
It was.
So we're gonna have to work with what we have access to. Oh, it's on the mic.
It was working.
Excuse me, everybody. And now you want to give me?
Hello, hello?
Yeah, that's.
Getting there.
How about this?
Hello?
Nope.
No, no,
There.
no,
Yes.
yes. That's too loud. Yeah, right.
You can back off.
Oh, I see. Oh,
Another option.
Yeah?
I'm not used to backing off.
If you get right into it, it'll be nice.
That's wonderful.
It's hard for Americans.
Thank you,
everybody.
Let's get right into it, it'll be nice.
All right. Yes, okay. So there is this theme which is broached by Socrates, and that is that perhaps there is an art of living well. Living well, by the way, is a translation of a Greek word, eudaimonia, and often translated as happiness, but I advise you to avoid that translation. I think it's very misleading. Anyway, Socrates' idea was that there might be an art to this, so that there could be experts in living well. But of course, if there is an art to it, there must be an object which the art aims at. And the object which the art aims at is what I call living excellently. And the reason I put in the modifier excellently here is to make sure that you realize that what we're talking about here is a target that a person who has this art and deploys it would aim at, right? So the excellent life is a kind of target which perhaps nobody can actually hit. It's just a too difficult target to hit. So we would all perhaps fall somewhat short of this target, the excellent life. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your life is a bad one. It just means that, you know, it could be better, but it might be a quite good life nonetheless. So failing to live an excellent life isn't necessarily a condemnation. It's just saying, you know, there's room for improvement there. Okay. The other thing that I want to emphasize is that when we talk about the target for this art of living well, that is this excellent life, it must not be thought that there is one very specific sort of life which is this target, right? Which is the best life for a human being. There might be a wide variety of lives, all of which are excellent. Okay. However, that does not preclude, and the Greek philosophers were hopeful on this point, that we might be able to say some general things about living excellently, which would apply to any life which was excellent. Okay? So there's two things to remember in this discussion and not to get sidetracked on. Number one, that falling short of the excellent life does not mean that you're living a bad life. And number two, that there are a wide variety of lives, at least there might very well be a wide variety of lives, which all qualify as excellent. Okay. So, Aristotle himself thought that there were two basic sorts